Welcome back to another episode of Book N Brew Reviews. I'm Brenna.
And I'm Kaylin. We're just a couple Canadian sisters who like reading books and drinking beers. So this week's episode, we are going to be reviewing Sunrise on the Reaping. And for our beer, we have Feedback Loop by 88 Brewing, which is a local brewery in Calgary.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
I have been there, yeah. So I used to live in Calgary for about a year, so I had the opportunity to go to quite a few breweries in the area. And yeah, it's a really cute, nice vibe brewery. And I like a lot of their beers, so hopefully we'll like this one too.
All right. What is this one? I didn't go.
It's a double IPA, I believe.
It says,
it's a strong beer, guys. We're at 8% here today, so
8%. West Coast double IPA. So we shall see how that is.
Yeah, and that's pretty much all it says about it on the can, so we don't really have any more intel than that, so let's get into it.
All right. Let's crack open our beer today. Oh, look at that. I didn't spill it this time. That's great.
Cheers.
Cheers. I like that.
It's pretty good.
See, this is what I was missing from our last IPA is that hops flavor.
Yeah, a lot of hops, not any malt, I don't think.
No malt. No malt this time, but lots of hops. I do like my hops.
Yeah. It's definitely strong. You can feel the strength to it, for sure.
Yeah, it's nice.
Let's get a little loopy by the end of the episode.
Yeah, we'll see if we're slurring our words by the end. That's like 2 beers in one.
Yeah.
And it's a tall can.
Oh, gosh. We're in for it.
All right.
Any more thoughts on the beer at all before we get into?
That's all I have for now. I think it's going to be a high-ranking beer just by my first taste.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'm trying to put my finger on kind of how to explain the taste initially. It's like, is it a little yeasty?
It's not as yeasty as I've had, but a little.
Yeah.
You get that hops flavor.
Yeah.
Very almost.
And it's like pretty thick and smooth, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like, how would you describe like a hops taste to somebody? I would say almost like bitter.
Bitter, a little bit like, I don't know. Lots of people say it's a little flowery.
Yeah.
Bitter, flowery. Yeah.
It has like that little bit of a bitter taste to it, which I do enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of to be expected with an IPA in any sense, but all right. Well, we're both enjoying this so far, so
yeah. All right, so do we want to first talk about books that we have read since our last podcast, and then maybe what we are going to read this upcoming week?
Yeah, so I'll go first because I don't have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
Even though I have quite a few books here in front of me. Pretty much the only book that I've read since our last podcast has been this short little novella that is actually kind of like a sequel, not really a sequel, but
it's a standalone.
Standalone, but I think the characters in this book end up showing up in the next book to the Serpent and the Wings of Night duo that we had just started. So this is pretty much the only book that I've read since, and I really did like it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that. You read it too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Any?
So yes, I did read this as well. As we said, it can be read between Serpents and the Wings of Night and Ashes of the Star-Cursed King. Is that what it is called? So that is a duology. This is a standalone, but it has 2 characters that are coming into play in the next book. So I would recommend reading it between the 2. I did really enjoy it as well. It's short. It's like 160 pages.
Yeah.
But it was just really well done. Like I felt like it flowed very smoothly, and
it just kind of followed the love story of these 2 characters kind of coming together, and it almost felt like it could have been a full-length novel. Like that's how much stuff really happened in it. I was really impressed.
Yeah, it happens during the exact same time as Serpents and the Wings of Night and kind of ends right as that book ends and the new one's going to begin. So you kind of know that they're going to converge, and these characters will be dealing with our characters from the Serpents and the Wings of Night. Yeah. But yeah, it was really good. If you're going to read the duology, I would suggest reading this. It's super quick, and it was a nice read. All right. Do you want to talk about something that's
more? So I know I said
on your list?
I know I said last time that I was going to read. This was on my to read list. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I did not get to it, however. I did start it, but I'm only about 30 pages in. I'm finding this one a little bit hard to get into. It's a lot of setting, kind of not really world building, but she's talking a lot about where she is and the characters, and she's not really, I don't know, being friendly with the characters. She's kind of just like there to do her work, and she doesn't really want to be a part of the town at all. So it's kind of just put me off a little bit. I did read a review recently that said that the beginning's pretty slow and then it starts picking up. So I'm going to give it another shot. And I also have the second one here waiting for me to get to. Okay.
I was going to ask if it was a series.
Yeah, it's a trilogy.
I feel like, especially with more of these like fantasy ones, if it's more than one book, that first bit of that first book is a struggle. Because I even felt that a bit with that Serpents in the Wings and Night. It was just like that 40-page lull.
I think this one's a little bit different just because it's more... The reason I think it's taking so long for me to really get into it and that it's slow is because it's kind of more of like a scientific approach. So it's not really like world building in the typical fantasy sense that this is a world that you don't really know, and there's a magic system to build on, and there's all these kind of rules that you're learning. It's kind of more like she's just talking about the fairies or how the land is playing into the lore and stuff. So it's just very scientific. Okay. So that's kind of how
it's different.
It's a little different and it's a little slower to get into, but I'm going to give it another shot. I'm going to really try to get into it because I've heard good things. So we'll see. Right. And so the other book that I'm kind of getting into is The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. I think I had kind of told myself that this was going to be the year of Brandon Sanderson. So this is the third book in the Mistborn trilogy. I actually am already 200 pages into it. This is just a very deep, intense, epic fantasy novel, but I am really enjoying this. So yeah, hopefully by the next time, I'll probably at least be reading it the next time we record, if not already finished.
And you've read quite a bit of Brandon Sanderson books, haven't you? I've always seen you.
So just those 3 so far is what I've read or am in, or currently reading, kind of thing. Kind of starting to chip away at it. So
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so books that I've read since our last recording, obviously we kind of touched on that, 6 Scorched Roses. I had to return already because I get all my books from the library because I'm cheap. I had to return The Feather So Vicious. So this is the sequel, which I will be reading. But Feather So Vicious, it is a dark fantasy romance. I actually really enjoyed it. I rated it like 4.5 stars. It's definitely a lot different from what I'm used to. I will say, pay attention to the trigger warnings because I'm not going to say the word because I think that we would get flagged, but it's a 4-letter word that means not consenting. So there is quite a good amount of either like referring to that or that like borderline happening. So just like caution there, but the ending I did not see coming at all. It's not your typical like fantasy romance. So I found that quite fun. This is a duology and I will be reading this. So I'm really excited because it left on a pretty good cliffhanger and I'm like, I cannot wait to read this.
She was yelling at me because we're, reviewing the book that we're reviewing this week, and she just finished it yesterday, and she's like, I can't wait to get to this other book though. I need to get through this one so that we can record and I can get to the book I really want to read.
And then as well, I'm actually also halfway through Heir of Fire. So this is book 3/4, depends on where you want to put Assassin's Blade in the Throne of Glass series. I have been reading this for a little while. I started this before reading our current book, Sunrise on the Reaping. So I'm still only about halfway through. I am struggling a little bit. I feel like nothing is happening and I'm already like 250, almost 300 pages in. So right now, I'm not sure. I have a friend who recommended to read this, and she said, just wait, it does get better. So I'm hoping for this last.
I think I've heard that a lot about Airfire, is that the beginning part is meh, okay, depending on who you are, but then at the end, it's like,
I will say, like, the first couple books in there, I was like pulled in. I really did enjoy it. So maybe just got to get through this one and get on. Another book that I have that I will be reading is going to be our number 2 in the duology for the Serpents and the Wings of Night. So this one is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. So
yeah, and I think just a note on what we're intending with this podcast is we might start a series with a review, but then going forward, I think we'll just kind of continue on our own and be talking about them just like we are now, just because going into a second book in a series, lots of spoilers, you can't really avoid it. And so, yeah, I think we're just going to we'll still do series, but we'll kind of just start with the first book. And then if you like the first book, you can continue on from there, just like we are.
Right.
So, and then I guess with our book this week is kind of technically in a series, but it's a prequel. And it's a prequel to a fairly popular series that came out
like 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah. So we're kind of just assuming that
treating this as a standalone almost.
Kind of as a standalone, but we're assuming that you know the background of what happens in the original Hunger Games trilogy.
Right.
So if there's any spoilers in the Hunger Games, then we assume that you already kind of know that part. And we'll try to keep the spoilers to this book minimal.
Yeah. So do you want to explain a little bit about like what Hunger Games is if somebody out there hasn't?
Yeah, so starting with the original trilogy, we follow Katniss and Peeta in the 74th Hunger Games. This is the original book in the series. So they go into the Hunger Games in the capital of Panem, which is kind of like a post-apocalyptic USA, Canada area. Yeah. And so they're kind of fighting to the death in the Hunger Games. In the end, kind of Katniss and Peeta both win, which is abnormal.
Right, because there's usually only one winner.
Yeah. And they kind of are the faces and start off a rebellion that kind of takes its roots from Katniss's perspective more in the second book, Catching Fire, and then really is full-blown rebellion in Mockingjay, which is the third book. So through that series, there's a character, Haymitch, who in the first book is the mentor to both Katniss and Peeta during the games. And then pretty much is a mentor and father-like figure to both of them throughout the rest of the series.
Right.
And so this prequel is following Haymitch.
Yeah. So just a note, like how Panem is set up. So you have the capital, which is almost like the hierarchy, like almost think of like the king and like a well-off people. So you have President Snow, who's overseeing everybody, and then all these like really wealthy people. And then you have districts 1 through 12. And as you get to the higher numbers, you really get more poverty.
There are some districts that have kind of closer relations to the capital, and so they kind of get some of those luxuries.
Yeah.
And they're not as impoverished. Katniss and Peeta are from District 12 as well as Haymitch. So
that's just kind of how that.
Typically, those from District 12 do not win the Hunger Games because they are starving before they get to the games. They're not really trained for this and stuff. So
they're just trying to survive.
Yeah. So kind of there was the winner of the 10th Hunger Games, which was from District 12, which happens in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is kind of President Snow's prequel, which we won't really get into because Kaylin hasn't read it, and it doesn't really fully matter to this. I might do some little tidbits on it when we talk about this book, but so 10th Hunger Games, she wins from District 12. Then Haymitch is also from District 12, which we presume already know that he obviously wins the games because he's then the mentor for Peeta and Katniss, who are from District 12 as well. So, yeah. I think that's all we really need to get into.
Yes. For
backstory getting into this book now.
Yeah. So, fun fact about Sunrise on the Reaping, I had never read any of the first 3 books. I remember when the movies came out, I definitely watched the first 2. I think for Mockingjay, I only ever watched part 1 because when I went back and watched it, I did not know what was happening. So this past week, I did not have time to read all 3 books. So I did a combination a little bit of watching the movies and listening to the audiobook. And I was even a little bit crazy. And in Catching Fire, I watched half the movie and then read half the audiobook. So it was definitely a time. But I got enough information that I was like, okay, I'm confident going into this, that I know these characters. I remember kind of what's happening. Yeah. So I feel like I can read this book.
It was pretty funny because I was asking her, like, well, do you want to read this one? And will you get out of it what we kind of need for the podcast or whatever? And she's like, well, I watched the movie, so like I should be okay. I'm like, yeah, like I think you should be able to get by as long as you kind of know, maybe who these people are and whatever. You don't need to really remember their backstory and everything, but just kind of like remember that they're involved in some way. And she's like, yeah, I don't even really remember who Haymitch is. And I was like, well, you should probably at least rewatch the movie. Yeah. So she did that and a little bit more. She got some of the audiobook in. So I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested to see what we both say about this, with me being a little bit more of a fan of the Hunger Games and have reread the series a couple times and have read the prequel of President Snow prequel and now this. So I'm kind of curious to see how both of us reacted to this book now. So the way that this book starts off is we're kind of introduced to the Haymitch character. In this one, he's about 16 years old, and we start on Reaping Day. So that's when all the people of the town kind of gather together to get selected to be in the Hunger Games. This year is the 50th quarter quell. So during Haymitch's year, there's double the tributes. So 2 boys and 2 girls from every district. Yeah. Well, he's getting prepared for the reaping with his family. So he has his mom and a little brother, and then he has his girlfriend so the little brother, the girlfriend, and him are all potentially being selected for this reaping.
Because they take all 12 to 18-year-olds of the town
district.
Yeah, and then their names are put in or whatever and drawn.
Yeah. So what I found interesting about this reaping is not only were there 2 boys and 2 girls reaped from every district, but I found that in every book of the Hunger Games, the selection of our main character was different. So in Katniss's book, the original trilogy, she actually volunteers for her sister. So her sister is the one who officially gets reaped, and she's like, nope, there's no way I'm letting my sister get reaped, and kind of just instincts take over and she volunteers. In the prequel for President Snow, the character that gets reaped in that situation that kind of becomes our secondary main character, she's kind of set up to get reaped. So I think she kind of has a bad relationship with the mayor and the mayor's daughter. And so they kind of rig it to reap her. And so she's kind of expecting to get reaped. Okay. And so then she has some things up her sleeve to make a performance of her reaping. Okay. So that was different than this. In Haymitch's year, he actually doesn't officially get reaped at all in the beginning. The last boy who's getting reaped, he shows an act of defiance and he starts running away. He's like, nope, I'm out. Yeah. I'm not playing a part of this. And then they shoot and kill him. So then there's a little bit of obviously chaos happening. Right. Haymitch's girlfriend kind of gets involved in kind of trying to protect the family of the person who had just passed away, and a peacekeeper who's kind of like peace officer type, trying to keep the peace, I guess, authority figure, was trying to silence everybody down and get everyone calm, and was about to hit Hamish's girlfriend, and he kind of stepped in and was like, nope, like, I'm going to protect my girl, and this is not okay. And then the person who's kind of hosting this reaping is like, well, perfect. We have our volunteer for the next person, the next tribute, because you kind of stepped in, and that's almost an act of rebellion. We don't do that. So here you go. Hamish, you're in the games.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, like Hamish didn't even actually, he was almost scot-free. He almost got out of it.
Yeah.
And then he didn't. So I was
on his birthday.
On his birthday, yeah. Just, very unfortunate. But I thought it was very interesting to have every book kind of having a reaping that goes a little differently.
Yes.
Yeah. So from the reaping, Hamish is taken with the other tributes to the capital and starts kind of preparing for the games. And there's a lot of like Easter eggs for other characters that have appeared in the rest of the series. So I've actually tabbed the book in a lot of places. So I don't know if you can really see, but a lot of these purple tabs are different kind of Easter eggs to either the original trilogy or the prequel. So we kind of get a taste of where that Mockingjay pin originally came from. A lot of different characters show up.
Well, we even get a little hint of Katniss's parents.
Yeah, Katniss's parents.
They're the same age as Hamish, and they're kind of running in that same friend circle.
Yeah. So in this book, it's kind of revealed that Hamish was maybe a little bit closer with at least Katniss's dad, who is actually passed away by the time we get to the Hunger Games.
Right.
So we don't really know much about him, but in this book at the beginning, they were really good friends. So it was kind of interesting to get a little bit more backstory on that.
Yeah. Oh boy.
All right, guys. So these beers are hitting us hard, and we just realized that for the past, probably 30
minutes,
we have not been recording.
Why, Brenna? Why?
My iPhone storage is full.
Yes. So we have now switched over to my phone because I have a lot of storage. So our positioning of the camera might be a little bit off right now.
And we're going to try to go back into things as best we can. Kind of just repeating ourselves for the last 20 or 30 minutes.
Something that caught my interest in this book was the mention of Beatty. And you start to learn a little bit more about his character. So having had just watched the movie / the audiobook of Catching Fire and Mockingjay, is that you learn Beatty is kind of like a really big part in this whole rebellion in those games. He's a really smart character. And in this one, you know that he has previously won. He's a victor of a previous Hunger Games. And he's part of a rebellion in this. And obviously Snow has found out something to punish him for. But he's too valuable for Snow to kill. And so his punishment is to have his son enter the Hunger Games. So that was something that was really interesting to me, just because like I kind of already had that connection, having gone through that first trilogy and kind of learning more about him. It was really sad.
Yeah, so learning about Beatty and knowing that his son is in the games and he almost has to like mentor his son through these games and almost knowing that he's almost 100% not going to make it.
Well, because there's 48 tributes in this one, and only one can come out.
Yeah.
So,
and then the other thing to note is that actually in this book we learn that Beatty has a wife and other child on the way.
Right.
And we never hear of this wife and other child in the original trilogy. So it's kind of assumed that maybe something happens to them after the events of this book because of his further involvement in these rebellious acts in this one. So yeah, Beatty's story is definitely a very sad one, and just everything that he kind of gave from himself for this rebellion to happen in 25 years from this one is really touching. So
yeah,
I think in this book there's kind of some like organized rebellion that I wasn't expecting to be as kind of organized as it actually is. So there's a lot of characters that are from the original trilogy that kind of really play a big role in that rebellion, that have some kind of roles in this book that are kind of starting some things. So Haymitch in particular kind of has some like tasks, you could say, in the games that he's kind of trying to take it down from the inside.
Right. Yeah, he's really trying to end the Hunger Games by some of the tasks that he's doing. He's trying to like kill the Hunger Games as a whole, and that's where he kind of has some help with people in the Capitol that are part of this like rebellion group. You can see it kind of in some of the peacekeepers that are involved because he's getting contraband into the games. That's obviously not allowed, but he's getting it. So there's a lot of people that are involved already at this point that are trying to end these Hunger Games as a whole, kind of rebelling against the Capitol.
Yeah.
I will say it's really important to remember too, there's a 25-year gap between this prequel and that Hunger Games series.
Right.
So it just feels a little odd that it's already so organized. Like there's a lot of people kind of involved already at this point, and then you're gonna go 25 years to the Hunger Games and Catching Fire, Mockingjay, that kind of series where the rebellion really starts gaining traction and they kind of do overthrow the Capitol and stuff. But yeah, it was just a little surprising.
I think it's kind of realistic for a rebellion to take so long to kind of get its bearings and build up to a point that it can actually overthrow the government that they're trying to. But at the same time, just knowing kind of President Snow and how involved these other characters are, the fact that he let them live that long, like usually he's kind of like before they get anything done, he's taking them out, poisoning them, whatever,
his main thing is to poison anyone with defiance.
So I'm just surprised that so many of these characters just made it so far.
Well, and even like you were saying, like even Haymitch, like how was he still alive when you really see how much he is defying, and it's all caught on camera. Like you know that President Snow sees this. He's involved. He knows what Haymitch is trying to do and how he didn't just target him. And
so there's mutts in the games that they can utilize that are kind of scientifically engineered animals or whatever that can specifically target certain people or whatever they want to utilize these things for.
Yeah, they're almost programmed to do certain things or attack certain people.
Right. So, and it's shown in this book with multiple other characters that he does take other people out for whatever reasons, but Haymitch is never one of those targets. Or he is, but he kind of just outsmarts the mutts in a way that he gets through it or whatever. So it's just kind of surprising that they didn't just take him out before the end of the game. Something that I enjoyed a lot in this book was the parallels between Haymitch and a lot of the other main characters throughout the other books in the series. So I think there's a big parallel between Haymitch and Katniss. They're both kind of rebellious. They're kind of ready to take on that face of the rebellion, and I found through Haymitch's actions in this, like he was really willing to do what he could to like bring down the games, kind of in the same sense that Katniss is. He also has a lot of parallels to Peeta in the sense of his relationship to, you know, his girlfriend. So in the original Hunger Games, Peeta is there pretty much to make sure that Katniss makes her way out of it, right? So Peeta doesn't really care if he gets out. He just wants Katniss to get out.
Right.
And that's almost the same sense in Haymitch, is a lot of his actions are, how can I do this while still protecting my girlfriend back home and my family back home?
They're just trying to sacrifice themselves to make sure that the people around them remain safe.
Which is kind of even more tragic in Haymitch's sense because of what ends up happening throughout the rest of the book. And then again, there's another parallel between Haymitch and President Snow. There's their relationship to kind of like a covey girl, which is almost kind of like a hippie type
they play group. Like music. They're musicians. They play for a lot of the other districts.
They're like more free birds. They're kind of situated outside of all the districts, and they were kind of like assimilated into District 12 at the time of when districts were kind of like created or whatever. President Snow in his prequel kind of has a relationship with one of these cubby girls, and Haymitch's girlfriend in this one is also a cubby girl. Yeah. So there's kind of the parallels there of like their girlfriends kind of being like this more rebellious type and wishing for that freedom for all their family and friends. So yeah, it was really interesting kind of to see how this Haymitch character had parallels to all these three very different characters. He's almost like a mixture of all three of them in different ways. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So reading through this book, I was curious to know at what point we kind of learn why Haymitch becomes such an alcoholic. Because in that first Hunger Games book, movie that I watched, he is full-blown alcoholic, drinking all the time, like can hardly function. And in the beginning of this book, like you learn that he's brewing alcohol with one of the older women in the district, but he is very clear to say that he does not drink at all. The lady even gives him a bottle of liquor for his birthday, and the first thing he says is, well, this is no use to me, but I'm going to go and sell this so that I can buy some things that are useful for me. So I was curious at what point through this book we were going to kind of learn like what was happening. So I was getting a little nervous towards the end because you still didn't really know. But I would say like that last 50 pages, everything really started to turn, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but you definitely learn why.
There's reasons why.
Yeah, there's definitely reasons why he's gone off the deep end at that point.
He's definitely gone through a lot during this book specifically that, you know, it would be hard for any person to really deal with. Yeah. So it really makes sense why he's turned to alcohol.
That pretty much wraps up our
thoughts on sunrise on
Sunrise on the Reaping.
Sunrise on the Reaping.
Those beers are really hitting me.
Yeah, they kind of are.
But
yeah. I mean, literally, this is probably the first thing I'm drinking and / eating today. So it's kind of, hit me a little bit.
All right. So what were your thoughts on the book then?
I kind of want to talk about your thoughts first. Just because I think it's interesting how we both reacted to it based on our previous relations with the...
So I gave this a 4-star. I don't know if I would have given it higher if I had actually read the first trilogy and stuff. I know I only watched mostly movies, so I know that the books are always a little bit better. It gives you a little bit more information. But I felt at least I knew kind of the characters, what was happening, the whole scene of the world. So I did enjoy it. I thought just knowing that there was 25 years between this and that first trilogy, I was a little confused that it was already like so kind of gung-ho on the rebellion at this point. So that I knocked it down a little bit for that. But I did feel like it was written well. It kept my attention throughout the whole book. So I would definitely recommend it. It wasn't bad by any means.
So I gave it a 4.5. And I think a little bit of that comes into me being just such a fan of the Hunger Games kind of world and universe as a whole. I did like all those like little Easter eggs of all the other characters and everything like that. The half-star just comes off again from like the rebellion a little bit. I thought it's realistic that it took so long for everything to kind of get built up and really like have something in place to overthrow the government. But I honestly thought it was like a little bit unrealistic that everyone kind of survived that long, because President Snow just like takes people out, right? So I'm just like surprised that everyone is still alive in 25 years time to do this.
Right.
So half-star off kind of for that. And then also just the fact that like Haymitch was never really targeted during his games specifically. So overall, love the writing, love the characters and the progression of everything. I love it as a book in the whole Pan Am universe. Just those couple things where I was kind of just like, little bit unbelievable, or kind of just goes against some of the characters that I already know,
right,
and their intentions. But yeah, no, really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
And
it was a good book.
if Suzanne Collins releases another book, I will be right there for it. So
we'll see.
All right. So a little side note on this book too, which is really not about this book in particular, but just a side note. I put a hold on this book at the library. So I had also put a hold on Onyx Storm when it came out back in January. And the day of release, I was like, nope, I can't wait for this. I need it today. And so I went to Costco and I bought it. Read it, and after a couple days, I checked the library and it was already being checked out by other people. So I was like, okay, I just need to, like, for next time, I just need to wait for a couple days. If you waited
24 hours, you would have got the free copy from the library.
Exactly. But... So for this one, I'm like number 6 on 11 copies. I'm like, okay, I just have to wait a couple days and I'll get this one. I can do that. So I waited a full week and I still wasn't ready. And so then I went to Costco and I bought it because I was like, I need to read this now.
Costco for the win.
Costco for the win, right? And so to this day, this book at the library is still not ready.
Yeah, and we're like, what, 3 weeks now after release?
3 weeks after release. So me and Kaylin, both of us, I know she's mentioned that she gets a lot of her books from the library. She's either getting them from the library or from me. And I do get a lot of my books from the library too. I really try to promote, you know, you don't need to buy books yourself to enjoy them. So I do like to promote the library. If you have a local library, definitely go check it out. For new releases, putting holds on them early, you can get them right away usually. And even
our next book
that we're going to be reviewing next time, it had come out April 1st and it was ready for me to check out April 2nd. Yeah. So sometimes it works, but this one
didn't work.
It didn't work. It's still not ready, and I had to just go buy it. Yeah. So, I mean, be patient, but utilize your libraries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think we can just go into our ratings of the beer now.
Yeah, absolutely. So
this is hitting me hard, guys.
Stop saying absolutely so much. Absolutely.
I think I have to give this a 5 out of 5 because of how much it's hitting me.
You know what? That's funny. I'm actually going to rate it 5.
It's really enjoyable.
I really like it. This is exactly what I am looking for in an IPA.
Right.
It has that good hops flavor. Mm-hmm. It's easy to drink.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and it hits you pretty good. It's a 8%.
I would say if you're going for, you know, one drink, this is a good one. It's definitely not something to just be all day having. It's so strong.
Yeah, you definitely couldn't be playing like beer pong with this. You would die.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 5 out of 5.
Yeah, definitely 5 out of 5 for me. It's
and perfect. It's not just because it's hitting me. Yeah. I was thinking 5 out of 5 at the beginning. So.
Me too. Yeah. As soon as I tasted that, I was like, this is what I am looking for in an IPA. It's perfect.
Yeah. No, this is good. So feedback loop 88 Brewing. We'll probably have you again sometime. All right, well, that wraps up this week's episode of Book and Brew Reviews.
Until next time, keep sipping and flipping.